It didn't begin with shouting, it began with a sound that felt even worse in the silence of that enormous empty Montecito mansion. The dull, violent smack of a thick stack of papers hitting polished oak. That sound was the real beginning. The first shot in a war that had been quietly building for years, for Prince Harry standing there with his chest tight and his hands trembling. This wasn't just another fight, it wasn't about headlines, photographers or palace grievances. This was something final. This was resignation. In that moment, Harry realised he was stepping away from a marriage he now believed was the most calculated, high-stakes deception of his life. The woman facing him showed no fear, no regret, no cracks. She wasn't the helpless victim he thought he had saved. From a cruel royal system, according to the documents spread across that table, she was the architect. And Harry, he was the investment. The asset, what Harry didn't understand yet, was this: he wasn't the one in control. While he thought he was making moves, she had been several layers ahead from the very first meeting while he played checkers. She was playing something far more complex, and the move she was about to make would shock not just him, but the entire world. The collapse of the Montecito fairy tale didn't arrive with chaos. It arrived quietly, the way most modern disasters do. It was the evening of December 17th, a date royal historians may one day circle in red. Harry sat alone in his study, lit only by the glow of his laptop screen, unaware that everything he believed was already falling apart. His phone buzzed, one message, one name he hadn't seen in years, an old friend from a former life, a Hollywood contact, who had gone quiet long before everything changed. There was no subject line, just a blunt warning: Harry, you need to see this. Before it gets wiped, a link sat underneath. This wasn't a tabloid story, it wasn't a news article, it was something darker, a doorway into a digital underworld Harry didn't even know existed. The link opened an archive, scrubbed forums, erased threads, blind items folders labelled Soho House secrets. Normally Harry would have dismissed it instantly. He'd been trained to tune out the noise, to ignore the critics, the so-called haters. But the final line of the message stopped him cold: your wife's past is resurfacing. And it's not what you think. For the next 4 hours, the Duke of Sussex disappeared down a rabbit hole that shattered everything he believed. This wasn't gossip, it was structure, a timeline, a detailed receipt, heavy chronology that told a very different story about a woman named Meghan. According to what he was reading, she didn't wander into royalty by chance. She was a Project A, carefully managed ascent, supported by a shadowy network of powerful connections. Their random meeting in London, the narrative, suggested it was about as spontaneous as a space shuttle launch. With every page, the sickness in his stomach deepened, because in this version of the story, Harry wasn't the rescuer, he was the objective. To understand why this information broke him, you have to understand where it came from. The files kept circling back to one place: Soho House. To outsiders, it's just an exclusive club. For creatives, to insiders, it's something else entirely: a crossroads, where new money meets old secrets, a transactional ecosystem, where careers are traded and silence has a price. And at the centre of it all, one name kept appearing: Marcus Anderson, the global membership director, a man insiders quietly described as a fixer. Someone who didn't just open doors, but decided who was allowed through them. The files claimed Meghan had been handed a membership she could never have afforded on a basic cable actress's salary. Not as a favour, as an investment. The threads laid it out step by step how she was strategically placed at certain parties, introduced to specific oligarchs, financiers and power players, climbing rung by rung with precision. As Harry read, memories he once treasured began to twist. He thought about their wedding guest list, the one that caused so much tension with his family. He remembered scanning the pews and seeing faces he barely knew: George Clooney, Oprah entertainment elites, with no real connection to his life. Back then, he believed they were there out of support. Out of love. Now, through the lens of Soho House, something far darker emerged. They weren't guests, they were contacts. His wedding hadn't been a ceremony. It had been a merger, a corporate alliance wrapped in royal symbolism. The most unsettling piece came from a recovered transcript of a deleted blog post. In it, a user identified as Meghan allegedly described marrying into royalty as the ultimate career move, a calculated leap toward global relevance that acting alone could never provide. Whether it was authentic or fabricated didn't matter in that moment. It aligned too perfectly with the reality. Harry was now living the separation from his family, the non-stop cameras, the branding deals, the manufactured narratives. It all clicked. It was a script. And he was the only person on stage who hadn't been given his lines. Harry didn't sleep that night. Instead, he did something reckless. He printed everything, every accusation, every timeline, every photo showing her on yachts beside men whose reputations were now in ruins. He needed it tangible. He needed to physically hold the betrayal. The next morning, he found her in the living room. Sunlight poured through the windows, illuminating the perfectly curated beige calm of their California home. He didn't argue, he didn't explain. He walked to the coffee table and dropped the stack of papers. The crack of paper against glass sounded like a gunshot. "I'm done," he said. His voice was flat. "Empty, unfamiliar. I can't live with a fraud. I want out." He expected tears. He expected her to crumble, to drop to the floor, to reach for the familiar role she'd played so flawlessly in front of cameras. He braced himself for the emotional performance. What he wasn't prepared for was the truth. Meghan didn't cry. She didn't even flinch. She calmly picked up the top page, skimmed it, and let out a short, dry laugh. Not nervous, not defensive, amused. The mask didn't slip. She tore it off. "Are you serious, Harry?" she said, her voice heavy with contempt. "You're throwing a tantrum over Reddit conspiracy theories. You're jealous because I had a life before you. Grow up, it's not jealousy." Harry snapped, his anger finally breaking through. "It's deception. You curated everything. You staged our lives. You hunted me." That's when the air in the room changed. Meghan stood up, and for the first time Harry saw the opponent he was actually facing. She slammed her hand onto the table, sending the papers jumping. "You have the audacity to lecture me about deception," she shot back. "You think you can divorce me and just walk away? If you try to take me down, Harry, I will bury you. I know where the bodies are buried, and I'm holding the shovel to drive the point home." She swept the laptop off the table. It smashed against the floor with a violent crack. The action was explosive. Her expression never changed, cold, controlled. This wasn't a fight to save a marriage, it was a declaration of war. Harry stood frozen in that moment. He understood too late that he had brought a knife to a nuclear fight. Meghan wasn't reacting, she was executing a counterstrike, one that felt rehearsed, prepared years in advance. As insurance, she didn't retreat to cry. She reached for her phone. "You think you're the only one with receipts," she whispered seconds later. Harry's phone buzzed. A screenshot of a text conversation from his phone, one he believed he'd erased years ago. It was from a dark stretch in their marriage when he felt trapped, isolated, and reached out to a former Flame A Hollywood actress who had always cared about him. The messages weren't explicit, but they were devastating. "I can't stand watching you live like this," the actress had written. "Leave her." Harry's reply wasn't loyalty, it wasn't denial. "Don't text me here," he had answered. "I'll reach out from the other number. I may need a few days away." It was vague, it was weak, and in the court of public opinion, it was lethal. It reframed him completely, not as the loyal husband, but as a man hedging his bets, a man quietly searching for an exit, possibly even cheating. "I've already drafted the email," Meghan said, her voice smooth, almost pleasant, and somehow that made it worse. "I haven't sent it to the press yet, but I did share it with a few of our mutual friends." Just to get their perspective, Harry felt the blood drain from his face. She hadn't just kept the evidence, she'd turned it into a weapon. "You wouldn't," he stammered. "Watch me." She replied, "You want to play the hero? I'll make sure the world sees you as the adulterer who abandoned his traumatized wife." Isolation poisoning the well. The speed of the collapse was breathtaking. Meghan didn't wait for lawyers or court dates. She moved immediately, before Harry could even leave the room. His phone started lighting up, but not with support. A text from a business associate. "Harry, we need to postpone next week's meeting. Some concerning things have come up." A missed call from a long-time mutual friend, someone who had always backed him. When Harry tried calling back, it went straight to voicemail. The well had already been poisoned. While Harry had spent hours reading forums and timelines, she had likely been making calls, quiet ones, strategic ones, planting doubt, framing a story where Harry wasn't uncovering anything. He was unraveling, paranoid, unstable, potentially dangerous. It was a classic move, seen in ruthless divorces and hostile corporate takeovers. Isolate the target, cut off their supply lines. The realization hit him hard. He had no one to call. His family was an ocean away. Bridges burned. His California friends weren't really his friends. They were hers. He was stranded on an island, and the tide was coming in fast if the personal attacks were brutal. The professional dismantling was precise over the next few days. Harry felt the shift at their shared foundation Archewell. There was no announcement, no firing, just quiet exclusion emails. Arrived missing his name. Major decisions were made without him. When he tried accessing shared financial drives, his permissions were gone. A glitch, an assistant muttered, refusing to meet his eyes. A few days later, Harry confronted her in her office. She was typing calmly, confidently. "Every inch, the CEO, I'm being pushed out." He said, "This is my foundation too, my name is on the door." She didn't stop typing, "We need stability, Harry. And right now, you're volatile, the board agrees. It's best if I handle day-to-day operations until you get yourself together." The board, Harry let out a bitter laugh. "We are the board, exactly," she said, finally looking up, and the majority vote says you're a liability. It was a masterclass in gaslighting. She took his openness, his honesty about trauma anxiety therapy, and turned it into a weapon. Every time Harry had spoken publicly about his mental health, she now repackaged it as evidence of instability, proof that he couldn't be trusted, proof that he wasn't capable. He was being slowly erased from his own life, reduced to a silent partner, a ceremonial figure, rolled out for photos, then locked out of the room where decisions were made. But for all his flaws, Harry was still a soldier. He had survived 2 tours in Afghanistan. He wasn't built to surrender quietly, so he moved in silence, burner phones, private consultations, lawyers who didn't leave paper trails. He began preparing to fight for his share, for the truth, for control of his own name. That's when Meghan escalated. She went nuclear. She targeted the one thing that mattered more to Harry than his reputation. His children. Late one night, a courier arrived with a legal packet. Inside was a draft psychiatric report commissioned by Meghan's legal team. It read like science, like authority, like fact, but it was fiction written in cold clinical language. It claimed Archie and Lilibet were showing signs of severe psychological distress, fear of their home environment, emotional instability. It didn't accuse Harry of physical abuse. That would have been too easy to disprove. Instead, it used poison words, unpredictable moods, paranoid ideation, failure to provide a psychologically safe environment. The conclusion was devastating for the children's safety. Full custody should remain with the mother, supervised visits only for the father. Harry shook as he read it, rage burning through him. Then his phone buzzed, an Instagram notification. Meghan had posted a video. It was grainy, dark, low quality, carefully designed to look unplanned. She was makeup free, eyes hollow, voice trembling. She didn't say much, just a whisper, "Please pray for us. We just want to be safe." She never said Harry's name. She didn't need to. The comments exploded instantly. Save Meghan. Harry has finally snapped. Get those kids away from him. Without filing a formal accusation, she had convicted him. In the court of public opinion, she had turned his children into shields and his reputation into collateral damage.